There may be a time in your life when you find yourself in a career or position, maybe it's a job, that just doesn't suit you or the person that you are anymore. And that's okay. Welcome to Find Your Power podcast. I am your host, Avery Jane. And today I am here with a man that was brave enough to make a drastic career change less than 3 years away from retirement because his situation just didn't suit him anymore. Thanks, Dad, for coming onto the podcast.
Happy to be here.
So, I want to start by asking you just for a brief description of your previous job position, and maybe in simple terms for people that don't have a background in this field or line of work.
Okay. Well, that's always a challenge. So, in simple terms, I was the director of a large multi-year project that was modernizing IT systems, government agency, and these systems served to insure people in the Medicaid program. So, they were insuring millions of people in the state of Florida. So it's all the systems to handle that program were being modernized, and so I was overseeing everything from the planning and strategy, the team building and budget oversight, problem solving on a daily basis, everything.
Okay. And did you enjoy this job?
It was a challenge, and I think, yeah, I feel like I did enjoy it. I enjoy a challenge in general. And so, yeah, I had a good time with it and had a great team.
Very cool. But you distanced yourself from that position
Yeah, I did.
completely,
Mostly,
mostly.
yeah.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit more? Mostly?
Well, I got to the point where I made a decision that I needed to separate myself from that. And I had been, I had 27 years with the state of Florida in my career. And so having 3 years to retirement, it aligned very well with the end of the project. So I had been targeted on that. Um, and I got to the point where I felt like I didn't think I could be successful and maintain the intensity level that I was at.
Okay, so when did you kind of realize that that job position wasn't really aligning with who you are anymore or who you wanted to be?
It wasn't so much who I wanted to be, it was more that I felt like I wasn't being as productive as I could be.
Hmm.
I felt like I had more to offer, but in the position I was in, it's hard to explain. But I once read that if you're ever doing a large modernization effort and you feel like you have to convince the leadership that it's necessary, you probably are in the wrong job. And in 5 years, I went through five leadership changes. So I was in a constant state of rejustifying this enormous $500 million effort.
So would you say it just kind of got difficult to communicate what you wanted to do, or would you say it got too easy? It wasn't as challenging as it was in the beginning?
No, it was too difficult. So it was
Mm.
basically there's so many stakeholders in a project like this, and there's so many different points of view and opinions on how to get it done. And in government, there's additional oversight and scrutiny. So, and it's not that I minded oversight at all. In fact, I encouraged it because then we could continue to get better. It was just the results of everything. There was a continuous spotlight on it. So you're not allowed to fail. In most modernization efforts, especially if you're going into it, it's kind of like remodeling a house. You can't move everybody out while you're working on it because they have no place to live. And these systems need to keep operating. So we made the joke that we're like building the plane as we're flying it. And so you can't fail.
Hmm.
And having that spotlight on it was more and more challenging, and I was up to it. It's just I decided, and there was a particular moment when I really decided that it wasn't for me. And once I came to that conclusion, things got a lot easier in my head.
And was there something that caused that particular moment?
Yeah, we changed leadership again, and I was challenged to come up with a plan that would essentially close out the project. And so we did that. We spent several months on it with a strategy, and we had all of our acceptance on the approach at our immediate leadership level, but then we had a hard time selling it to our stakeholders. And I realized that it it you feel like you're being pushed out of another plane analogy, but you're pushed out of a plane without a parachute. You know, like you can only do so much, and so I felt like and I'd always told my team, we get knocked down, we get back up again, and we keep trying, we keep pushing forward. I felt like, okay, I'm going to get up one more time, but I'm not going to do this.
Mhm. Mhm.
Got tired of getting knocked down.
Sure. Yeah, makes
Yeah,
sense. Makes sense. So it was kind of like that last knockdown
it was.
was the last straw.
It was.
Sure. And can you kind of talk about the experience you had when you were leaving? Did you get negative backlash? Did you have a hard time, or was it more positive and people kind of just wished you the best?
What's interesting is in my position, it's basically it's kind of like a coach of a college football team. It's like it's the hot seat. It's like you're always on the hot seat, and so you've got to go present to people who are deciding on your budget, and you're in a constant state of that. So most of the time, um, to leave that position, you're told to leave. It's difficult to leave. Um, I just when I decided that I wanted to do something else, I also knew that it was going to be very hard to replace that role. So I came up with a plan on my own, and I presented it very matter of factly. I said, here's what I'm going to do, and I'd like to continue to support for 2 more months on a full time basis, and then I will be available on a part time basis to continue to support. So there was no bad feelings from any of my leadership that, in this. They tried to talk me out of it, but I had already said this is what I'm going to do. It was very matter of fact. I had people that I worked with very closely for years. I did this role for more than 5 years, which again was unheard of in that particular type of position. But the people I've worked with, a lot of them were upset, but they understood completely.
Mhm.
In fact, most of them said, "I can't believe you did it that long."
Mm. Do you feel that it was easy to walk away once you kind of made that decision? Because you said you kind of made that whole plan up. I'm sure that kind of helped in the process of getting away from that position, knowing that you were giving them something when you were leaving. You didn't just walk out, leave them with nothing.
Yeah, the decision was hard,
Mm,
but the implementation of the plan was very easy for me.
okay.
The hardest part of it was feeling like I was letting my team down
Right.
because they were looking for me for direction for 5 years, especially the core team of like the five managers that we had.
Hmm.
They completely understood. No, it wasn't,
No hard
no
feelings.
hard feelings at all. And
That's good.
and I stuck around, and what I had to do was actually separate myself for some time because I felt like they were coming to me to kind of vent about the situation and how things were going, and I had already decided to step away, so I
Right.
wasn't going to try and control any of that
Hmm.
anymore.
Yeah, and you didn't need to be a part of it
No,
anymore.
I just offered myself. I offered assistance to the people that were now running it, but I just said you'll need to talk to them.
Right, right. So, kind of branching away from that position that you had, moving on to a more relevant topic of the current times. What kind of activities or hobbies have you done recently since you left that position? Or maybe ones that you have done before, but now you're doing more of?
Yeah, I used to, before I started this job, I spent a lot of time doing things around the house, woodworking, gardening, and I neglected a lot of that. And so I've had to try and pick up some of that again. It's hard to explain. It's not like you can just say, "Oh, now I've got time to do this hobby." I've had to, and I'm continuing to do this. I've had to retool my brain the way I think because it's almost like being parachuted into and cross enemy line. I think we were talking about this the other day. How your brain doesn't really know the difference between taking a test, or being chased by a bear,
Right.
right? The stress I was feeling was kind of like a war effort,
Mhm.
and so I would come in on a Monday morning, for example, and it'd be like a 20-hour day of being on,
Mhm.
and you don't know what's going to come your way, and you're constantly solving problems, not knowing what's coming your way. So you're always on guard, and when you're on guard you can't think, oh, I think I'm going to go do this.
Right.
So I've had to retool my mind to think I can do those things, and I started with just spending more time with my family,
Mhm.
um, and being more engaged when I am, and that's been the first step. That's what I decided to do first. I drive, Alex to school, and I pick her up every day. And that's how I control my work day.
Mhm.
So it's not a full like 10 hours. It's
Right. Because this is the kind of position that before this wasn't your business. That you weren't the
mm-mm,
CEO.
mm-mm.
You don't need to necessarily have this on your mind outside of the 9 to 5.
Before I did.
But you did. But
Yes.
you don't really have to. The reason for having a 9 to 5 job for a lot of people is so then they can have that time away from it
Yeah.
versus having maybe their own
So a
business.
lot of people go work for the state because they don't want to have to think about it.
Exactly.
And I would what I would always do is encourage my team to work that way. But we also had a lot of vendors and contractors. We had like over 700 people working on the project.
Mhm.
And a lot of them were working 50, 60 hours a week.
Right.
Um, so when they're producing product, you've got to review it and test it and things like that. So we would work weekends a lot,
Mhm.
and just considerably understaffed for about 3 years of the project. It made it very hard to
And did
turn
that
it off.
was that because of COVID?
No, it's because of funding.
Okay.
We made recommendations to increase our staffing levels to kind of keep pace with the product. So if you think about, you're hiring all these people to create something, you've got to test it. You've got to give them requirements. We have to have subject matter experts engaged, but they're also working their full-time jobs. So you kind of have to supplement your own staff to free up work time so they can help build the systems.
Sure.
And if you think about it, you need to probably increase your workforce by about 50% in order to build a new system, because people today don't have that much slack time in their work to just go ahead and work on something new. And it was very hard to get that support in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. So going back to the question though, you would say when you were having that position, it was hard to think about other things that you wanted to do outside of
Right.
work, but now you are kind of rewiring your brain to kind of think more of a way that you do have this time and maybe, it's not so stressful. You don't have to make yourself constantly be thinking about this work for 24 hours of the day, right?
Correct.
Right. So it's kind of been helpful, I would guess, in the way that you can kind of now distance yourself when it's time. On the weekends, would you say?
Oh yeah, yeah. Been the best part, actually,
Mhm.
because I don't pay attention at all. just to understand, so what I did when I went part time, I'm now supporting a different part of my agency.
Mhm.
So now I'm doing something completely different, and I'm just really a consultant.
Okay.
So I'm a part time consultant to my agency, and right away they basically gave me a project that said, okay, go help that person.
Mhm.
That person's got a lot of things that a lot of systems, a lot of processes. They have a team of about 80 people. Go help them. I'm like, okay. And I spent about 3 weeks just interviewing people and finding out what needed to be fixed and what could be fixed, what some short term goals, long term goals. In fact, I found ways to get more federal funding for things that they were doing that they were not taking advantage of. Just came up with this laundry list of things, that opportunities, and right away just started implementing them. And it was a great, I need to stay challenged like that. But I also immediately started to task other people that could be doing these things anyway. And they just, nobody knew what to do.
Mhm.
So it's a consultant role.
Sure. And is that kind of what you're set at doing right now, or do you have any kind of current career goals when it comes to that?
That's
Um,
one thing I'm working on. The other thing I'm working on is the modernization that we were doing. There are 50 more of them in the nation. So every state has a program like we have in
mhm.
Florida. Ours is like the fourth largest in the nation. So in the 5 years that I managed it, 5.5, we had many successes. And there are many states that want to learn from what we did. So I'm working on building a business to take it on the road. So all the things that we learned, the negotiations, all the contract that we wrote, and how to finesse a contract to benefit both the vendors and the state, um, and then just how to deal with the compliance at the federal level. All of it is very complex,
Mhm.
and so taking that on the road and helping other states is something I'm interested in doing, but not all consuming.
Right, right. Okay. So kind of more would you prefer to stay on a part-time kind of position?
I would, but I think I'm also willing to, ebb and flow, right?
Sure.
I want to, but I do want to make time. I've been wanting to do more backpacking and hiking and things,
Mhm.
so I want to make more time for that.
And that's something that you picked up prior to leaving your job or after?
Prior to leaving is one of the methods I was trying to use to cope with that stress. I call it like forest bathing, just kind of like helping you clear your head.
Right, and also when you're out on the trail, you don't have any internet to
You
any
have an excuse to
service.
disconnect.
Sure.
Yes, yes,
Yes,
you
exactly.
can't be reached. So
Exactly. Yeah. Wrapping it up a little bit. What advice would you give to someone that's currently in the position of disliking their current job, and feeling stuck? And maybe if they feel like there's no safe way out, what advice would you give to this person?
it's funny because there are a lot of people that I work with still that feel like they're in that position.
Hmm.
And I tell them, you need to do what you want to do. First, think about what you want to do and what you want to be. And then, so you're not running away from something, you're running to. Um, but I think a lot of people, particularly in state government, they're drawn to it because of the security of the job.
Sure.
So they have a really hard time leaving something because they just feel like, well, I just won't be able to make ends meet. Um, that's the nature of a lot of people that I work with. They're not living paycheck to paycheck, but they still feel like they're kind of like stuck.
Hmm.
And so I would say to people that you're not. There are always options.
Exactly. Yeah.
And particularly once you get up into your like, 40s and 50s, you really have more options than you realize, even though you feel more stuck.
Right.
And ironically, when you're younger, you have just as many options, but you don't feel like it's stuck.
Right.
If you could just embrace what you felt when you were younger and think,
Exactly.
well, there's opportunities out there.
Right. And nothing really has to end if you don't want it to end. You don't have to retire at the age of 65 like everyone else or whatever around your 60s like everyone else if you don't want to.
That's a good point. See, because what I was doing was I had set a target for, like, in the state of Florida, if you work 30 years,
Hmm.
you get your retirement immediately.
Right.
So I could have gotten pension starting right away. I was so focused on that 3 more years that I needed. I wasn't thinking about my quality of life for how many more years. And
Exactly.
what I decided was I'd willingly trade 10 years of quality of life for 3 years of no quality of life
Right. Mhm.
and keep working because
Mhm.
I'm always going to keep working. It's just, what am I doing?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's something in honestly that's probably another topic for another episode and maybe I'll have you back on there for another one because I think especially in America the topic of retirement becomes really tricky because I think that a lot of people work to retire and in most other countries especially in Europe I think it's people are working to live and not really working to just retire. They're enjoying their position of work because retirement is kind of looked at in a different lens in other countries. But like I said, that's kind of a topic for that's a whole nother episode. So my last question is what do you think your power or purpose in life is? Or multiple, you could have many.
Well, I mean, it, I think it's evolved. I think I used to think, like when I was in kindergarten, when they asked all the kids what they wanted to be when they grew up, my answer was Superman. And I think I felt like my purpose has been to help people that can't help themselves. I think it's become more personal, and I feel like my purpose is to just leave this world in a better place than when I got here and support my family. That's really
Mhm.
what I'm here for.
Yeah, yeah. I like that answer. I think that a lot of times people try to find their purpose in out external job positions, careers, all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, you can have your purpose, your power from honestly the things around you in your life that you kind of overlook, or even activities or hobbies that just make you feel happy that you're not getting paid for outside of work or stuff like that.
Yeah,
So very overlooked.
yeah.
Well, that concludes all my questions. Do you have anything else that you'd like to add before we wrap this up?
No, this has been fun.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on to my podcast. Hopefully, we will talk again soon on here.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you guys so much for listening. And remember, if you're feeling stuck or in a position that just doesn't suit you, that's okay. You can get out too. There's never only one answer. You're also not alone. Everyone has gone through some kind of stagnant moment in life. Tune in every Thursday to listen or watch video on YouTube or Spotify. And make sure to check out the Instagram or TikTok, both at findyourpower_podcast. Feel free to DM me through the Instagram as well if you'd like. And thank you so much again for tuning in and listening. I'm really happy to have you all here. If you enjoyed as well, please rate the podcast and give it a follow on Spotify or a subscribe on YouTube. It really helps the podcast grow, as well as a rating on Spotify, possibly 5 stars if you like it. And lastly, if you would like to be featured for an interview, you can send me an email at the email linked in the description of the podcast. Thank you guys so much again. I will talk to you soon. And don't forget, we will find your power. What if it wasn't recording?
That would suck.